Welcome to Points of View. We're asking the question this morning, are we heading towards a world of AI-powered humanoid teachers? I feel like saying exterminate, I'm not going to. Global Summit last week, Melania Trump, she set out this big vision for artificial intelligence, personalizing learning for every child, humanoid educators in classrooms, delivering this new era of economic growth. What does this actually mean for teachers, though? She was maybe talking about home education, but are we going to see this move into classrooms? What are the results of all of this going to be? Is it going to be this new age, this golden era of AI humanoid teachers managing behavior in classrooms and accelerating learning for the population of the world, or is this just a disaster waiting to happen? It's all coming up. Points of View. See you in a minute.
Outstanding, a world-class vision, world-class this.
I'm a real leadership geek, honestly. I've spent my whole career reading books and chatting to people.
I just find the whole thing and the announcement, the way it's been announced, bizarre.
If you could move away from a model where teachers are so intensely focused.
Morning. How are we all doing this morning? It's Points of View. It's Sunday's edition. We've got Lucy, Liz, Jo, and myself talking about this big story that came out last week in the United States about AI. And we saw Melania Trump, the First Lady, coming out with the white Plato, the humanoid teacher. And she made some remarks about this humanoid thing that appeared and sort of walked to the front and then made this big introduction to everybody. So I'll just to set the scene a little bit, I'll read a few quotes that she actually said in the speech that she gave once this humanoid being came out. She said the future of AI is personified. It will be formed in the shape of humans. Artificial intelligence will move from our mobile phones to humanoids that deliver utility. She then moved on. Imagine a humanoid educator named Plato. Access to the classical studies is now instantaneous. Literature, science, art, philosophy, mathematics, history. Plato will provide a personalized experience adapted to the needs of each student. Plato is always patient and always available. Predictably, our children will develop deeper critical thinking and independent reasoning abilities. The AI-powered Plato will boost analytical skills and problem solving and adapt in real time to a student's pace, prior knowledge, and even emotional state. And the byproduct, according to Melania, is a more well-rounded lifestyle for our children, freeing up time for being with friends, playing sports, and developing interests beyond school. So we're going to be discussing that this morning. Obviously, if you're watching this live, drop us a line and give us a like, give us a share. Don't forget, it would be lovely to have your involvement in the conversation this morning if you've got something to say on it. But I think we'll start with anybody else who wants to come in. Does anyone want to start with this?
I'm happy to.
Go for it.
I feel when I saw this, I didn't actually read the blurb surrounding it until more recently, but when I first saw it, my instincts were there is absolutely no understanding of how you need an actual physical human in the room when learning is taking place. Aside from anything else, kids would dismantle a robot within 5 minutes. That would not, however much it costs, however sophisticated it is, if they are left unattended in a room with a piece of equipment like that, even with laptops these days, kids are prying keys off if they're not supervised properly. That would be that was with a teacher in the room. They would absolutely dismantle it, and that would be of any age. It would be a disaster. Obviously, now I've seen that the idea is that it's in the home. So where's the money for this coming from? If they're 25,000 each, who's paying for that?
Just to tag in, her second pillar was humanoid educators as at home tools for students. Yeah. So I don't, to say what she's basically saying, I think you know, the speech was aimed at these humanoid educators being used at home as sort of additional, you know, homework helper type beings, right, or whatever. I don't know. I mean, of course, unions in the US have reacted really strongly to this and said, you know, this is terrible and this is awful and this is, you know, going to be an infringement on teachers and all the rest of it. So I just thought I'd throw that in there. I don't know.
I don't see. My big concern would be, well, first of all, the cost of it. If we couldn't pay for a teacher, like, how is anybody? It's going to be something for the wealthy, isn't it? Because school districts and whatever aren't going to be paying for this. They're already not paying enough money into school systems as it is, so it's not going to be funded. Where's the money going to come from? But also, this is a system that could be wildly abused in the home. It would worry me profusely about so it's so Brave New World, isn't it? This idea of what could be going on this one-to-one basis of. And one of the companies that was listed in the blurb was Palantir, wasn't it? And that's had some concerns raised around it and its use of data, and it would worry me very.
I don't think it's going to happen. I think it's one of those, it's like flying skateboards, you know, that we were all supposed to be zooming around on by the year 2000. It's like any of these things. It's an idea of imagine if, and it's been carried forward. Like you say, I mean, you know, it would be the wealthiest children. They'd probably coach them in tennis and things as well in their large gardens in the afternoons. And, you know, I think, but if we're actually going to talk about it as a plausible possibility, then, you know, I would have concerns that actually it was going to become something that would replace formal education. Because if you think of it, the cost of running a school, the cost of, you know, the fact that in Tom's school, pick a subject, maths is taught by 3 different teachers and all have slightly different ways of delivering that lesson. In Liz's school, the same thing. Well, these humanoid robots would all be programmed with the same thing, and I guess it says they would adapt to the child's needs, but it would be a uniform sort of approach to all children of all sorts. But like you said, Liz, about behaviour, you've got one of those in your house. I don't know if it's there for your homework. You know, it says it will free up more time or something, it said, for children to go out and play. But it sounds very much to me like if that's not being brought in the classroom, then when is it being used? I don't think we're being given the full information. I was completely baffled. I know that this FLOTUS thing where they have a first lady system in the US is a thing, but who were the other spouses who attended this thing?
Jill Biden.
But well, no, because it was other people though. Yeah, because she was
on
in
the panel.
Education though.
She was on the panel.
But you know, the others from other countries, you know, like Keir Starmer's wife is a solicitor or something. I don't know what she is, but she does something like legal, I think. She might not have any interest in education whatsoever. So why is this being aimed at the spouses? Oh my god, it just that really threw me. That was my biggest question of all. After I read it and thought, well, that ain't gonna happen, my next question was, why is that being brought in by an unelected spouse? And again,
but couldn't you say, Lucy,
stuff.
are you in favour of the monarchy?
Yes, I am, but they don't.
So are you against the Duke of Edinburgh award then?
Well, no, but that's no, right, okay. So you're going to try and
no, I was just a genuine question.
No, but that's an extracurricular thing. What this is, and in general, just the idea that the spouse of the president sort of has this. I know, like Princess Catherine, the Princess of Wales, has a early years sort of initiative that she runs, but it's not. This seems to be a sort of a convention where she's brought other world leaders' wives and husbands into. I don't know. I mean, I thought it was baffling. It was just an aside, but no, I'm not against the Duke of Edinburgh. I'm pro-monarchy, and I think all of these schemes. I mean, the more people that are working on things and coming up with ideas, I just found it really interesting that actually we're talking about something in education that isn't even going through a political system. It's just the dream of somebody who thinks, where could we run with this? We've spoken about this before, AI in classrooms and things, and you know, humans need humans.
Should we have a comment from one of our viewers?
Yeah.
Charlie has commented, her view is too extreme, but I do agree the knowledge-heavy curriculum and assessment system needs to adapt to our modern world. Less of a focus on knowledge retention and more on how to use the knowledge in contexts other than high-stakes exams. We still need human interaction for complex ideas to be formed into a schema. Robots can't replace human interaction, but could be used to explore ideas and applications. This pretty much mirrors my sort of view, right? You can never replace a teacher with a robot. There are many reasons for that. You can never replace human relationships with robot relationships. You can never replace classroom management from a human being in a conventional classroom setting. Slightly different if it's one-to-one or a small group tutoring session. But in a classroom session where there's 25, 30 students, a robot will never be able to replace a teacher. That's my personal point of view. However, in saying all that, I do think that there probably does need to be a little bit more of an open mind in terms of, as we move forward, the possibilities of tech assistance or tech tech in schools and in classrooms in this capacity seems ridiculous when you see a white robot approaching you and going, hello, what can I do for you? Whatever. But obviously, as things develop, they're going to become way more realistic than that. And they're going to become, you know, it's going to be just like a verbal conversation, I guess, with an advanced version of ChatGPT, basically in real time. And they sort of float around and do whatever, you know, probably drones at some point. They won't even have legs. They'll just be, you know, drones flying around the classroom and whatever. I don't know. But I think there's probably a lot of capacity there for assistance in the classroom for teachers using technology. I think that's always been the case, right? But if it depends what you want. As Melania, to be fair to her, said, in terms of information and the accessibility of information, and when she uses that word personalized, I get exactly what she's saying. You know, there's one teacher, there's 30 students, and a teacher can only answer one question or ask one question at a time. So I get what she's saying there. And if every student has their own robot, then, you know, they can ask the robot whatever they want in real time. But in a classroom setting, there's a disconnect between classroom setting and AI robot helping a student maybe at home or in addition to the teacher. You're never going to be able to replace a teacher. Never. So therefore, it's all about how can it be utilized in school, beyond school, where it's helping the teacher and helping the schools to maybe give the teachers more time. We've had this debate before when I can't remember what it was about actually, but I remember having a debate about use of technology and it could have been AI, but I think that there are possibilities where a teacher can maybe get a little bit more time using technology, get a bit more time back using technology more than we currently do, or maybe as things move forward. I'm not saying it's this, a robot, but I don't think we should close our minds to possibilities is all I'm saying.
Well, they could do the admin things, couldn't they? All the extra admin things that teachers are increasingly being asked to do, which takes away from our time where we're being able to give that more personalized, more effective classroom experience because we're so pulled away by all the other stuff.
Should we have AI robots doing the phone calls home?
Yes.
You just input in, say this, like ChatGPT, say this, and then they make the call for you, and they have the conversation with you on the phone, and then there's like an emergency button that a parent can press. It's like, I want to speak to a human.
Yeah.
No, I don't know. I mean, obviously, I'm just thinking outside the box here in terms of.
I
Yeah,
don't
go
know.
on,
It
Lucy.
just bothers me because I know that there's a move away now from knowledge rich, from memorizing information and things. And I know that in education, people are very resistant to that. They don't like it because they think it's unfair. And in a world where we can search things up nowadays, you shouldn't have to remember things. But it turns us it forces a dependency. Like, I'm proud to know things that I know. I don't know a great deal of stuff, but I'm really proud of the things I do know. When somebody says, oh, well, it's like in Shakespeare when and I think, oh, wow, imagine being able to know enough things to be able to think of an appropriate comment and then quote that. So for me, I think that really matters. And I've seen some politicians, I'm not going to name a particular one, who sits on Newsnight or on GB News or whatever and uses a phone. And I feel that is because those answers are coming through on a phone. We'll read off a phone at times. And I think that dependence, that inability to, or that lack of trust in yourself, that the AI or somebody else can be giving you better information than you can come up with yourself, is a really dangerous thing. And we may end up in a situation one day where Tom's just going to get an AI answer to us.
No, it's just trying to be funny.
But,
It's just trying to be funny.
but it is concerning that the more we say, do you want to go to the doctor, where every time you go there the doctor says, right, wait a minute, I'm just going to plug in your your symptoms into my phone, and then do you get what I mean? Like, we have to know stuff, and I do worry that dependency, and it's already coming on, that dependency on technology to be able to fill that gap so that we don't have to think so much. That concerns me.
I agree with that. I can honestly say, as an English teacher who quotes Shakespeare at the drop of a hat in every situation, I was of a time in exams when I had open book exams. I did not need to memorize huge chunks of information, and in my adult life I have not had to memorize huge chunks of Shakespeare, but through repetition I have learned those things and I am able to drop them. I don't know if it necessarily has to come through that high stakes exam. I think with passion and interest in topics comes that ability to withhold information. But I do agree with the fact that technology is removing that element. But I don't think those two things can coexist. I think it's possible for us to understand that we are becoming dependent on technology, and we are seeing that impact in the classroom. We're seeing that even just at a basic level, that inability to think something through or want to think something through, not have that immediate answer. I can set a task going, and within 30 seconds someone has told me that they can't do it, not because they can't do it, but because it requires some thinking. And that's, can't I just look it up? No, use you have everything in front of you to enable you to answer this. Use it to help you.
But do you not think that's always been the case though, Liz? That even before, like when I started teaching, that was still the case? Or do you think are you saying it's got worse?
It's got so much worse.
Yeah.
It's got so much worse. It's so, like, the time. I think people will always say, I can't do something. Of course they will. But I think it's the volume of young people who are going to that and the speed at which it happens, because I think it's alarming. And there's that video of that guy, isn't there, talking about how this generation are less cognitively I can't get my words out. Put your teeth in. Less cognitively capable, and they're the first generation that are less cognitively capable than their parents, and because they've got technology doing a lot of their thinking for them, and so we are not making them resilient in that fashion for thinking really hard, and technology is replacing that. I think if obviously everything this week has picked up about social media as well, hasn't it, and the impact and the addiction, and that's probably going to be our moment that we see things start to pick up pace with that, and a bit of a change to how young people have access to the internet, smartphones, technology, etc., because laws are going to be put in place potentially as a result of that. I'll be so interested to see if it's that's reversed a little bit as the next few years come through after that, if young people are a little more open to thinking about things. And because I worry that we're not thinking outside the box on anything these days now. It's only a handful of young people in a classroom now who are really willing to push through that difficult barrier, because they can see.
Are you talking about resilience though, rather than thinking?
But in terms of, that I think so. No, I'm thinking resilience. Okay. I think there's all sorts of different forms of resilience. Okay. But it's just that pushing through that difficulty barrier on something. I have the conversation in my classroom all the time. If you're not finding something difficult, your brain's not working hard enough. Like that's the point. You have to struggle sometimes in order to get better. If you're finding something easy all the time, you're just plateauing. You have to, they've sort of got to this place where if they find something difficult, but even the games they play on their phones and things like that get a hint, so that you know, because you can't pass this next level or whatever, and you watch an advert and you get that little help to it's in everything. It's not just in their learning, it's in every avenue of their lives, that they're just having these little kind of, don't struggle, have this, watch an advert and it will make your life a little bit easier. And technology is doing that to them. And the guy who I was talking about, who was saying they were less cognitively capable, it's the correlation between when we started to use technology more and now. And so we've got to try and dial it back somehow. And so putting these robots in a personalized experience, I don't think is a bad thing. We're seeing lots of very clever technology, aren't we, that's responding to individual students' needs. And so creating patterns of learning. A lot of the ed tech stuff is becoming streamlined and deliberately catered for the individual student that's using it. I think that's good. I think that's really, really useful, much more so than we would be able to do, because there's only one of us and there's 30 of them. So I understand that personalized experience, but is it going to make them do it, or is it going to think for them? I just have so many.
I think we've got issues with spoon feeding, haven't we? We've got issues 100%. with spoon feeding, but the issues with spoon feeding, and I will hold my hands up here as a teacher as well on this, is if I want to manage the classroom and if I want to have, you know, I'm not necessarily a massive fan of the word control, but if I want to manage and run the classroom and I want to make sure that everything in terms of the behavior and the classroom management side is good. Now, it is really tempting as a teacher, because we all know as teachers, the easiest thing to do, and this is what teachers used to do 20 years ago, the easiest thing to do is go copy this off the board. It's the easiest thing to do, because everyone just gets a pen and they look up, they copy a sentence, then they look down, they copy another sentence. Like, they're all doing something and they're all just silent doing it. Now, the next grade up from that is probably teacher with, I don't know, PowerPoint, just sort of spending the whole lesson going through a series of slides and stock scripted responses that students make, and it's that way. That's probably the next step up from that. Then you're getting into, when you go up further and further up the chain, I suppose that the other end of the scale is the whole sort of inquiry learning side of, I'm setting you this question, it doesn't have a structure, go and find out the answer for an hour. And they all just go off like it's some sort of amazing seminar environment, you know, like it's Facebook HQ and they're sort of Meta HQ and they're all on tables wearing hoodies and all dissecting the problems. Wonderful, wonderful. That's like the other end of the spectrum for me. That's the top. I don't like to necessarily use the top end of the spectrum, but it is the top end of the spectrum, because this is where I've had this debate on pedagogy before, is in the like creme de la creme place of learning, it would be great if it was just like a university seminar. But the reality is we're teaching 11-year-olds, 12-year-olds, 13-year-olds. Primary are teaching, you know, obviously younger than that. And the reality is attention spans are getting shorter and shorter. The reality is behaviors that are being brought into the classroom are getting more and more disruptive and more pertinent and more consistent. So the reality is, as much as even the really traditional teacher who was sat here would probably say, listen, if behavior was perfect, if behavior was amazing, and all the students showed a massive desire to learn, then a university seminar environment would be wonderful, where we can sort of all sit around and have this lovely back and forth chat. And then we do sort of, projects together, and you come in and you chat with us about the projects, and then, you input knowledge, and then you go. It's lovely. And maybe there's a small number of schools where that can happen, but we're talking a very small number of schools. And it really is dictated as well by class sizes. Because as soon as you get 20...
Most children couldn't do that. I mean, I remember we had a project that we had to do when I was at school, at primary school, probably my last year, I think. And I did nothing. I did nothing because I was not somebody, I was not a self-starter. If you didn't put the questions in front of me, or I just didn't, I lacked that capacity. That's what we're teaching children for, isn't it? That's how we teach them all the way through school, is to be prepared for that seminar environment, so that by the time they get to A level, you would be saying to students, right, guys, come on, you don't need me to spoon feed you this information. You know what you need to find out. You've got all the tools you need. That's exactly what learning is about. I mean, Jo, I think you might be a head teacher, I'm not sure, but from that sort of position, or it's SLT, do you see robots in the classroom as being something that you think you could, you would value?
Absolutely not. I'm thinking, working really, really, really hard to not just go on some sort of mad political rant about how that whole thing with Melania is just about money and about generating business interest, and all of those companies that are labeled on their AI revolution, all of that stuff. Putting that aside, thinking about AI, there was an article on the BBC a couple of weeks ago about AI toys, AI-enabled toys, and the interactions that they were supposed to have. They were supposed to encourage imaginative play amongst children. They'd done a year's worth of research on these imaginative toys, and basically said, don't leave a child alone with one, because these toys were essentially not able to replicate human interaction. That when a child was saying, I love you, or I feel sad, that it was dishing out an inappropriate response. It was going off on weird tangents and odd pathways. It was meant to encourage speech and language development and communication skills, but it had trouble distinguishing between adult and children's voices, and also what was appropriate and inappropriate as a response. And I think if you move that into the arena of older children, whether this be at home or at school, I completely agree with Liz's, whether the robot would physically survive is a question, certainly in some classrooms, but whether it would mentally survive is also a thing. I teach some exciting young people, and always have done. And several years ago, I taught a young man with quite significant ADHD. And part of my skill as a teacher was to recognize when he had a burning off-topic question that I needed to answer. Otherwise, I couldn't get him back on topic. And these questions often had nothing to do with anything that I could understand. So in July, he would ask me who sang All I Want for Christmas, like in the middle of something that I was saying. But I could see it go across his eyes. I would answer the question and then bring it straight back to topic. An AI enabled whatever, I dread to think what kind of even perfectly reasonable rabbit holes a robot might take you down if they had followed this young man's, right, okay, so we're in the Mariah Carey world. Now I've got another question about something else. And part of the educator's skill is to go, hang on, not relevant here. Let's get it back to the thing that we're doing. And I think I also have a little bit of an issue around the concept of thinking as well. What we think is based on what we know. The more we know, the better we think. And finding that balance around what we know, what we think. I spend quite a lot of time standing up in front of young people and adults talking. And sometimes I'm very well prepared, and other times I'm not quite as prepared as I'd like to be. And I used to work with a guy who would say, "Yeah, Jo, how do you know what you think until you've heard what you've got to say?" And that idea around the thinking process is often built on our interactions with others on, I think, Tom, what you said, on a human level, because the empathy that might be required to help me understand the thinking, I might know what I think about a particular topic. And maybe, who knows, if Melania Trump was sat here now chatting to me, I might change what I think based on what she feels she knows, and that exchange. But hers, again, will be based on empathy. It'll be based on a human response, not just on cold, hard facts. Because that's not how the world works, and it's not how the world develops. The world has always had assistive technology of one form or another. In the time I've been a teacher, I've taught kids with visual impairments who relied on proper old school Braille typing machines, assistive technology, absolutely, so they can access the curriculum. A HLTA who could read the Braille to translate into things for me so that I was able to mark it. Now, I don't need that HLTA and I don't need that brailing machine. It can be done in a completely different way, assistive type, talk to text, all of those things. The world has always had assistive technology to help people with their access to the curriculum. I'm not sure that using technology in a full-on replace teachers kind of way is ever going to be a thing, but it's not because the technology, and we kind of know the technology can't be reliable. Anyone who's seen Matt Goodwin get a bit of a roasting over his chat GPT or not, possibly book, that's another kind of thing. But yeah, it's, I think having Plato in your home, I don't even want to get started on the disadvantage gap and this just sounds like another toy for rich people who don't really need to work or learn or do anything anyway. But
just a quick shout out to our amazing partners on the show this morning. We've got AQA, and AQA are helping you to build CPD, strengthen your understanding of mark schemes, and gain fresh insights to enhance your teaching. And this is about becoming an examiner this summer. It's flexible, it's paid work that fits around your commitments, with full training from experts and ongoing support from an experienced team leader. So whether you're an early careers teacher or have years of classroom experience, we recommend at TTR checking in with AQA and seeing if you would like to become an examiner this summer. Also, little shout out to our other big supporter on the show this morning, Hachette Learning. The show is brought to you in partnership with Hachette Learning and their publishers of professional development books and resources that support great teaching and learning in schools around the world. And you can level up your professional development today and visit hachetlearning.com to explore their full range of titles. Oh, we've had a comment. David has said schools don't teach thinking, they teach repetition and regurgitation for the purpose of passing an exam. This is the connection to employment that's been broken over the last 2 decades. Most employers, including myself, no longer bother to check GCSE grades. Bear in mind, I used to be a chemistry teacher.
What do you check, David? Tell us. What do you check?
Yeah, David, follow up and tell us what you do check. Yeah,
On the flip side of that, when I went for every teaching job I've ever gone for, I've had to provide my GCSE certificates, regardless of how many other qualifications, despite having ridiculous. 20 years of experience under my belt, despite having a postgraduate degree and undergraduate degree.
I mean, A-level I understand, and obviously degree I understand, but GCSE.
Is it your maths and English, though? That's what they want to. Yeah, because you have to have those at a C or above, don't you?
True.
So I would imagine that's why they probably totally don't care how you did in drama, or in physics.
Drama.
Did you? I got a B, and I had to play the part of a boy because we only had girls in our group, and that apparently I didn't convey it well enough. So there we go. Not that I'm
convincing.
bitter. I mean, you know, no, absolutely. It was in 1989. I think I'd do a better job now. But no. I mean, I just have so many concerns about the idea of this. So yesterday I went into a big shiny telephone, sort of technology store, and bought myself a new phone because my phone was no longer working. And my new phone, the company who I bought it from, have their own intelligence now. And they said, when I was setting it up, they went, do you want the intelligence function? And I said, oh, hang on, you know, what is it? And I said, because my kids, the strange thing is my kids are aged between 19 and 27, and they are all really against AI. They do not like it at all. The same as my young colleagues. They're not keen. It does seem to be older generations that are looking at this for solutions, and younger generations who are feeling that it is going to remove opportunity from them. And anyway, the guy said, no, don't worry about it. He said, because this company is being very careful about AI because of all of these reasons, because they want to be considered responsible providers of AI. So this AI will look at my notifications, see the types of notifications that, you know, if there's one from a hospital, it will recognize that it's from the hospital, and that's something that I absolutely need to see. So rather than it being buried under, you know, 1,000 emails about shoes, or do you get what I mean, then that will come up top. So that was really helpful. But I think that companies now are starting to see that AI needs to be used, promoted, and offered responsibly because of the issues. I did a sort of an AI course. It wasn't an AI course, but it was a course where a bit of the training was about using AI. And the guy, honestly, it absolutely blew my mind. It's really actually sort of piqued an interest in AI and what it can do. But he was saying about how there are different types, that all these different AI companies have different rules and regulations. So he had asked to test it out. He asked about a plan to get rid of a certain type of creature that was very dangerous in a certain country, and I really don't want to, because it was his story, really. But some AI said that would be morally wrong and we wouldn't let you know, and there were other AIs that gave him a full blown step-by-step plan on how to eradicate the world from these things. So there are some AI companies that are far more reputable than others. I think Joe's point about AI toys for children, I mean, my God, there is nothing better to develop children's language and speech than another human, preferably someone in their family, who can do that with them, and their class teachers and their friends. It's terrifying when we think how much we are turning to you know, technology all the time to absent ourselves from the need. So we recognize that there are some children, for example, whose speech and language is not reached the stage that it should be for their age, and we recognize that that's a problem. But we should be putting in human interventions into the humans around them to try and improve on that. And we must accept as well that not everybody reaches the same benchmarks at the same times, and that not everybody will ever reach the benchmark that they should. And so I think we have to be accepting of that. Like I said, again, I fear that uniformity, that sort of all children will know this in this way, and I feel as though that is where AI could take us in a classroom or a teaching environment.
A few more comments. So David replied about what he tests, and he said attitude, experience, and baseline intelligence, all of which can be established easily by meeting the person. The best employees I have had basically no grades, but they are demonstrably intelligent people. He also said, here's my question. Before schooling was instituted in the way you understand today, how do you think employers recruited?
Nepotism.
Yeah, that's the other problem, though, isn't it? Because you could flip that round and go, somebody has really good qualifications and they get overlooked because the guy's mates with whoever and they like their banter when they meet them.
I think one of the other things I've got there is before education was instituted in the way that we understand it today, the wealthy people paid all the way back to ancient times. Wealthy people paid for tutors. That's what they did. Wealthy people did that. Now, absolutely,
Tudor times.
You get philosophical schools, even in ancient Greece, philosophical schools cropping up. Aristotle, Plato, they gathered students around them.
Yeah.
It's unclear whether they were paid to do that or whether this was part of their thinking approaches or whatever. But Romans paid for tutors. Wealthy people paid for tutors. Governesses, the employment of females in the world of education. That was one of the few jobs that you could still do for a wealthy family who could afford to pay to do that. Little Women, one of my favorite books. You know, what is Meg? She's a governess. She tries to teach younger children to read, to write, to do all of those things. Ragged schools got set up, certainly in the UK. Tom, my history's a little bit ropey. It's a while since I've done that. Correct me if I'm wrong on anything. But they were set up
because with AI for you.
Don't you dare. They were set up to help the poor get an access to an education, because that was the thing that made the difference to life. It made the difference to the way that people progressed, and it tried to close, even back then in Victorian England, the disadvantage gap, the disadvantage gap that's always existed. And I guess that idea about employers absolutely did recruit people, and I'm sure that they saw people with skills and qualities. If you believe half of what Charles Dickens wrote, that's a good life lesson. If you were lucky, you'd get spotted by a convict and sponsored and all of these wonderful things would happen to you. But realistically, how, and I do ask the question, how can you spot underlying intelligence, baseline intelligence, if somebody doesn't have a raft of GCSE, or at least some GCSE qualifications? It tells us all different things, but yeah.
I think there are a lot of people who interview very, very well who don't necessarily, in their day-to-day work, reflect the version of themselves that they presented in an interview.
Yeah.
I've been through many interview processes with people in the past where that has proved to be the case. So I think, while I I kind of do agree with David in the sense that actually, if employers genuinely are disregarding these qualifications, why are we doing them? Do you
think they are, Liz? Do you think realistically?
I really don't know, because I personally, I've said this before on the show, like, I am absolutely in support of a massive overhaul of the education system. I really do not think it's reflective of modern life at all. Because contrary to what Michael Gove said on this show, he said teachers are afraid of change. I'm not afraid of change. It's just the right kind of change.
Happens all the time.
Absolutely. I mean, gosh, if anyone rolls with the punches, it's us, isn't it? Like, we're literally overnight, we're pretty good at that. And I really, really feel like we need to be looking at an education system which reflects modern life. I don't.
What is that,
AI
Liz? Though,
robots.
can you give us a succinct thing when it comes to the exam system, for example? Or you said this radical change. What is that?
Well, I really think these terminal final exams being the be all and end all of everything is ridiculous, because that is not reflective of modern life. I completely agree with what Lucy said. We don't want people who are just completely dependent on their devices for everything. But I genuinely don't believe that we are seeing the best of our young people by putting them through this cookie cutter system with all these hoops to jump through. Which is what's leading us to what we've said earlier in this discussion about us spoon feeding them, because we know that we've got data to get and spreadsheets to fill, and we've got criteria to meet, and we're like, well, if you're not doing it, we're going to do it for you to make you be able to do it, which is, the system's broken. We are not educating as we should be educating. I don't think. I think because everyone's being measured against these standards, we are then effectively plugging all the gaps to make sure those standards are met. But that isn't necessarily meaning that our young people are getting the education that they need and the skills that they need to go out into the world. I mean, I know from preparing for our GCSEs at school, we have, you know, I had previous leadership in my department that said, it doesn't matter if they have to unteach everything at college. We just need to get them through their GCSEs. That's what we need to do. That's our responsibility. Well, then it's not lifelong learning, is it? Our responsibility is supposed to be lifelong learning. If we're teaching them just to pass an exam, that's not effective learning, in my opinion.
But you know,
So
I mean,
what's
we
the-
had
sorry, Lucy, go on.
We had coursework. So I failed my maths. I ended up teaching it as an unqualified teacher, but I did end up leading maths intervention. And but I failed it at school and resat it at college because my parents, you didn't have to in those days. My parents recognised you need to have maths, so you'll resit it. And we had coursework, and there were people in my class whose parents did the coursework for them to get them through it. And so I do think we have to be very careful. That final exam system can be problematic, but it generally, do you often get absolute shocks where you go, my word, I can't believe that so-and-so got that result? Generally, they tend to fall in line roughly. Sometimes you might go, well, God, I would have thought he'd have got a 9. He was so exceptional, but he got an 8, or there might be variances in that. But generally, it does tend to work out that the effort you put in and the ability that you have tends to be reflected in the results, certainly in those more, I mean, I suppose English might be different, I don't know, but in subjects like maths, where you're either right or wrong, where, you know, you either got the substantial amount of the question correct in order to get enough marks to get you over those grades, you know, boundaries into the next one. Generally, there aren't that many shocks to the system. I've never known anybody get a grade 9 that nobody would have dreamt, because they were always on target for a 5. Like, where did they get that from? Do you see what I mean? So for me, whereas I think with
it does work the other way
coursework,
around, though. I do think there are some students, like I taught a student a few years ago now who was in the COVID year, and she was incredibly bright. Like, she was, to all intents and purposes, she was a grade 9 student. But the second you put her under any pressure in an exam, she couldn't do any of it. None of it. She just absolutely collapsed. And I was so grateful that she didn't do her GCSEs because of COVID, because I could then use the body of work that I had to be able to say, this is what she should get. This is absolutely what she should get. Because I think that's where teacher input comes in, and seeing what they do over time becomes...
Liz, do you think, though, that, and this is going to sound probably controversial, but do you think, given the pressures within the system on teachers to get my results, the phrase I hate more than anything, my results were amazing. That's a teacher, by the way, not the kid saying that. Do you think that, given those pressures, in the sort of system you're describing, teachers would more likely err on the side of extreme optimism?
But even when we were doing the teacher assessed during COVID, when we had to do that, we did it 2 years in a row, didn't we? First year I missed because I was on maternity leave. Second year, we had a curve still that we had to fit. So we were all kept within about, so none of us could go in and go, oh, right, this student should get this, and this, because we still had a curve that we had to fit. Again, that's unfair as far as I'm concerned. I don't think that's right, that some students shouldn't get the grades that they deserve because unfortunately they're in a particularly able cohort, and so therefore they've got to come a little bit further down. I actually don't think there's a fair way anyway. I don't think anything, and because every system is open to abuse, isn't it? Because they'll be, like you say, my results, and schools being with league tables and everything, schools being held to account, there's going to be fiddling that takes place, because not everyone's going to be honest about it.
Emma has said system overall reflection of consistency via ongoing assessments, more verbal assessments, creative response tasks, problem solving, real life learning linked to employers and emotional intelligence should be assessed. Bloody hell.
But,
Emotional intelligence assessments.
Another example of that, okay, was in the biology GCSE that my eldest son took. So my eldest son is a doctor. He got top grades, but the only B he got was in biology, and that was because they had a teacher assessed component, or not, I don't know if it was teacher assessed, but they had to work in a pair to do an experiment, basically. And the person who he was paired with was messed around, didn't do it properly, and so it pulled my son's mark down. And although he got really good marks for, he would have got an A or an A star or whatever for his 3 exam components, they did so badly in the experiment parts, I think they had to do 3 or something, that he ended up getting a B and was furious about it. And the
And that's
teacher
fair
said to
enough.
me, but you know, I mean, the problem is you have that teacher problem that she was very strict. You're only supposed to do it 1 of each, and you can't redo it. And she abided by those rules really strictly. But other teachers don't, and would say, right, we'll try this again and see if you. And so again, you know, that kind of problem crept in. She apologized to me for A level at parents' evening and apologized, and I was like, look, it didn't bother me, you know. I think he should have been happy with what he got, but you know, at the end of the day, if your advancement depended on that. I remember the pain of having to assess students. We only did the first year of us assessing what the students would have got, because the second year one of our teachers wrote an entire batch of own papers that were 45 minutes each paper, 6 of them, and then we all marked them and they were then checked. And so we did an actual exam system for the second year of COVID. But for that first year of COVID, trying to assess what these students would have got was horrible. I would hate to be in charge of that. And of course, you're then questioning, am I giving that student a 4 because they always smile, they always try so hard? Would they really get 4 compared to that student who was always quite challenging in the class? But and nobody enjoyed it, nobody liked it. So it's a tricky one. AI would probably be able to do it for us, though.
I do get the point. Yeah, agreed. I do get the point, though, that about practical learning. I do sort of take David's point about that in terms of, like, you know, more vocational pathways, a better sort of better view on vocational pathways. I still think there's a certain sort of snobbery and bias that exists against vocational pathways, especially in the UK. I really do think. I mean, when I went through school, it was insane. I mean, my school was insane. Just the way it looked at vocational pathways and the way it looked at other opportunities outside of go to uni, because that's what success is. Do that. That's what success is.
Oh yeah.
Get this. That's what success is. Well, hang on a minute. It's the world in that respect. And I'm always cynical when sort of experts come on and say that, you know, like the Melania Trump summit, the world's changed. We need to embrace this. But on the flip side, the world has changed, like evidence-based, in the sense of the opportunities, for example, for entrepreneurs. With online, you know, projects and so on, you know, that the internet has opened up a huge range of possibilities that simply did not exist prior to like the year 2000. You know, like that it is different in that respect. So there are more, you know, whether you like it or not, there are more opportunities to set things up. You still got to work. We mentioned this before. You still got to be able to work hard. That's the bit where, you know, that's the bit where I don't think things have changed. You've still got to be able to work hard. You've still got to be resilient. You've still got to come up with ideas. You've still got to do. But what I'm saying is, do we lead children away from more practical vocational pathways? Are there enough still opportunity? I think there's more than there used to be. I think that's good.
A lot more.
But, you know, up to the age of 16, you know, are there enough real proper vocational opportunities? And part of that is, of course, to do with the availability of teachers, that, you know, the availability of training for those teachers, trying to get people to teach particular subjects. But, you know, basically, I suppose I'm asking, do we think the curriculum's too narrow?
Yes, absolutely it is. Absolutely is. we're not appreciating that society is made up of a whole range of different people. We're assuming that everybody is academically leaning, which everybody isn't necessarily. And that's not, like you say, there's a bit of snobbery associated with that concept that everybody's academic, you just got to give them the opportunity. Like, if you're not academic, that's a problem. People have all sorts of different strengths, you know. Okay, so I'm not necessarily academic. I just work really hard to fit that mold. But you know, there are things that I couldn't do. If you made me a PE teacher and you put me out on the field and you tried to get me to teach a PE lesson, I would embarrass myself significantly because I have no coordination. I have no observational skills about a strategy or tactics or anything like that. My brain doesn't work that way. And you could teach me, and you could try and get me, and I would listen and I would study and I would do whatever. But I'm still not going to be able to do that. You put me in a science lab and you know, get me to, yes, I'll listen and I'll observe and I'll do everything that I'm told to do. It's like following a recipe. I can follow a recipe to the letter, and what I produce is absolutely awful at the end of it and looks nothing like it's supposed to, tastes nothing like it's supposed to. You can't assume that just because you put a certain structure in place that everyone's going to meet that. You've got to understand that everybody has their different strengths, and we need to celebrate that. And we need people to work in all areas of society doing all these different things. And why can that not start when they're a little bit younger? Why does it have to start when they're 16, 18?
I think I've probably got a little bit of an old-fashioned example around issues with that, I guess, Liz. And I say it's an old-fashioned example because my example is my dad. My dad is 79 in a couple of months, and he would sit here now. He's been a tradesman all his working career. He started work at 14, 15, tradesman is his entire life. And I don't want to use the word bitter to describe my dad because that's not really quite right, but it is about the education system. My dad left school, as I say, at 15. He went to a secondary modern, and he learned to be a plater. Still not sure what that really is, if I'm honest with you, but it's something to do with metal and welding and stuff like that. And he went to work in the big chemical industry place that's local to or was local to us. He spent all of his time, once he'd learned how to do his trade really well, working hard at reading. Not that he couldn't read, but reading widely, reading lots of things, having an interest in history, all of the things that he would say. Crosswords, a man has never not done a crossword puzzle. And if he doesn't know the answer to a particular crossword question, hard ones as well, I can't work them out a lot of the time, he goes and looks it up, he'll go and find it out. And he's done that since well before AI. He was an encyclopedia looker up when computers didn't exist and everything else. And he's really resentful of the quality of education that was denied to him because he wasn't considered to be academically capable enough to get into the grammar school, which would have taken him down a different route. And I think my dad would say that choices and being able to learn to do things, because he still loves to fix stuff, he still loves to, but God, he loves a debate, and he can have a debate and debate with lots of different people because he's bothered to learn all of the other stuff.
But we can teach these things without examining them. That's the thing. I think that's the
but would we if they weren't examined?
But that shows the system's broken, though, doesn't it?
Yeah,
because that's because we have become a system that operates purely on this. We're preparing you for an exam, and we almost perpetuate this idea that it's not worth learning unless it's for an exam. Whereas if we had a system that operated on, let's just love learning, let's have a debate, let's read books and enjoy them, let's talk about them without having, like I read with my nurture set year 9s recently, we've got a Friday afternoon period 6 lesson, which when you've got a nurture group, Friday period 6 is not a time when you're going to achieve a huge amount of learning. So
log fire on YouTube, Liz. Log fire if you've got a screen. Log fire.
that's such a good
turn
idea.
the lights out. Bang.
Well,
You
we
love
read
it.
a book every Friday period 6. We read a book, not
Perfect.
because they're being examined on it, not
No.
because they are it's on an exam, not for anything, not for assessment, anything. We have literally just read a book for pleasure, to enjoy it. My God, those kids are engaged. They are so engaged. They want to talk about it. They go away, because the book that we read was about 9/11. They went away, they read articles about it, they watched videos about it, they came back and said, Miss, did you know about this? It inspired them to learn in a way that if we had studied that book, it would have switched them off.
But
so we can do these things without it being because you have a test, you have an assessment.
I just worried that we'd be something nice, that's a nice extra to have, rather than that would exist. Sorry,
but
Lucy.
also, well, no, it's fine. But people, even young people, want bang for their buck. They want to get something out of it. If you said we're going to do school now, but there won't be any exams, then the ones who didn't want to engage would see no point in engaging. Half the children who would normally engage because they see the value in it. So it's like year 9. We've spoken before. I remember on one of our the shows talking about the fact that year 9, one of the problems is there is no exam, and so you've got that whole year 7, 8, 9 where really nothing happens. And it's once you get to year 10, you're like, this is really important now, guys. This is the time. We're building to your exams. Do you get what I mean? And they
like everything else before,
it
it was just rubbish.
Yeah, but it wasn't. But they don't see that because there was nothing to be gained out of it. Like the whole of secondary school.
We created that, though, I think.
Yeah, possibly. I mean,
think it's like a cycle that we can't break, because we have always worked in a system whereby they're assessed for what they do. So they think that places value on what they do rather than just for the thrill of learning. Because like my son loves to learn. He doesn't really understand about assessments and exams or anything. He just loves to go in, ask questions, learn about things, come home, talk to me about them. He loves that. What really scares me is once he feels that pressure of exams, and when the talk of his SATs comes around and things like that, he's gonna stop being this joyful learner.
I don't know, Liz. My daughter was gutted when she was in a year 5, 6 shared class, and all the year 6s were doing their SATs, and she wasn't, because she was year 5. And she was so disappointed because she said they get to do this and they're really important and we're just forgotten. It would be like, it's like running, like some people run for pleasure as adults, but when we're children, if you said, right, you're all going to start, they would naturally look for the fastest. They would naturally look for the person, like we do as humans. That's how we improve, if you get what I mean. And I don't know, I'm very, I can't imagine the idea of sort of everyone going to school and then getting an attendance certificate at the end of it and nothing more. Do you get what I mean? Yes, you went to school. You went to school, and everybody went to school, and nobody, all the people who tried really hard would go, well, what was the point? I read the book on 9/11, but nobody ever wanted to know. I was never assessed for my views on it, and I had some really good ideas. Nobody's going to tell us after this, for example, that was a really good point. That was super. Do you get what I mean? But we do it because as adults, you get your own satisfaction from the doing. But
just to say a big shout out to Hachette Learning. The show is brought to you in partnership with Hachette Learning, who are publishers of professional development books and resources that support great teaching in schools around the world. And visit hachetteLearning.com to find out more. And we also really appreciate our partners, AQA. They're the UK's most chosen assessment organisation. You might have already heard of them. As we enter exam season, they're focused on helping teachers feel supported and ready. If you want to find out more about how they're working with teachers, just visit the AQA website. Jo, were you going to come in with something? Feel like you were.
No, I was thinking about all sort of the different ideas. We started out with Melania and Plato robot and all of those kinds of ideas about, and everything that we've talked about here, and everything with chats on the side and things that we've said here. We've all changed our thinking on certain issues, certain topics. We've all given each other things to think about, whether we agree or not, and there'll be things that we take away and think about later on. And I'm still not convinced that any type of AI robot is going to ever have the flexibility of thinking in the way that the human brain does, and therefore the connections, the tiny tweaks, the tiny changes that we make to our views as we go along is, I just can't see it catching on, Tom.
I agree.
Well, I
Yeah.
think that's a good place to finish because we're out of time. If you're interested in finding out more about Plato, we don't sell Plato, so you'll have to visit the Plato website. But don't.
Are we
go
not
to
sponsored by Plato?
Go
No.
to Hashtag Learn and make
Absolutely
your
we
way.
ever be.
Anyway,
Absolutely not.
it's been a good chat. We'll be back again actually in about 50 minutes with Martin and Claudia talking about teaching and career. So if you're interested in that, then get involved. Starts in about 50 minutes live on here. So thank you very much, everybody who's tuned in live or who's listened back to this. Really appreciate it. Don't forget to give us a like and a subscribe if you're listening to this as a podcast or on playback. Thanks, everybody, and good morning. See you later.
Bye.
Outstanding, a world-class vision, a world-class this.
I'm a real leadership geek, honestly. I've spent my whole career reading books and chatting to people.
I just find the whole thing and the announcement, the way it's been announced, bizarre.
If you could move away from a model where teachers are so intensely focused